Hey, I'm Bob Cargill, and I'm here with Jordan Jones. And if you can see this, then you are joining us for our very first Bible and Archaeology live stream. Jordan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here this morning. Thank you for everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, so this is the first time we're doing this live. I am going to try to do a couple of procedural things here. And then we're going to make some announcements. We've got a full slate here. But for just a second here, I'm going to open this up again. First time we're doing this, so please bear with us. 1 second here. There we go. All right. Well, as we are getting fired up here again, I'm Bob Cargill. I'm here with Jordan Jones. This is our very first Bible and Archaeology live. And while we're getting fired up here at the beginning, we're glad that you're here to join us. We know that people will be joining us as we move forward, but we have a very happy announcement to make here at Bible and Archaeology, and that is that we have finally surpassed 100,000 subscribers here on Bible and Archaeology, and that is all in thanks to you. We are thankful to you for tuning in and for being loyal supporters of us and for listening to the things that we have to say. But we listen a lot to your feedback, and we try to give you the information and answer the questions that you want. So thank you for paying attention and listening to us, and especially listening to Jordan, since he, all summer was doing these shorts. But thanks. We crossed 100,000. In fact, what is it this morning? 114,000. So we're rapidly. Thanks to all of our colleagues. Derek over at Myth Vision, Dan McClellan, Data over Dogma, and all of our other colleagues who we work with. Religion for Breakfast, Andrew Mark Henry, a lot of our colleagues who do a lot of this same stuff. We're all working together collaboratively to, put responsible content out on the air. Jordan, what do you think about 100,000 viewers?
It's been a huge year, and it's come across a lot of different kinds of content, which in large part has come based off of the questions, the requests of the viewers. So thank you for sending that kind of stuff in, because it's helped structure what you want to see, and we're happy to help bring you what you would like to see. But it's been a big year of growth. I'm happy to be a part of it and to see where this continues to go. As you said, some of the other channels that we work with. Also want to say thank you to all the guests who have been on over the last year for interviews, those scholars that have taken the time to come in and share this information, because there's so much coming out every year, whether it's new books, it's archaeology, it's studies. There's so much to get into that for us, it can be hard even to keep track of what's going on. And this is what we spend our time on. And so viewers, if there's things you would like to see, books or interviews that you'd like to see over this next year, always feel free to leave those as comments, to send those in as requests, because we're happy to try to find or get into contact with those people that you may be wanting to hear from.
When you join us, and as you join us, you are welcome to leave chat comments to your right there. As you leave comments, we will try our best to respond to them as they come in. Jordan and I are both going to be taking a peek over there, and you'll notice that you can leave sticker comments. And what sticker comments are, these are comments that you can come in and leave. When you leave a sticker, I think you have to purchase them for, I think, any dollar amount, but it leaves them up there. It makes them colorful and it puts them up at the top. They are priority comments, and we will do our best to always honor and answer those comments. And so thank you for the stickers in advance. If you put your sticker comments up there. We will do our best to see those and to put those to answer those comments for you. One of the two of us will catch those and we'll try to answer those as we go along. We also want to make you aware of our Patreon. This is you could become a patron of Bible and Archaeology. This is a new thing we just set up. So in addition to coming to Bible and Archaeology website and coming to the Bible and Archaeology YouTube channel, you can become a patron. And this is patreon.com/excavator, XKV8R. It's the same brand that we have. That's patreon.com/XKV8R, excavator.
And that link is in the description too.
Yes, thank you. And you can go there, and there's a couple of levels that you can join. One is just a supporter, $3 a month, very expensive. But for $3 a month, you can just give us general support to help keep Bible and Archaeology going. And then we have a second level, which is $6 a month, whopping. But what you can do there is send us questions in advance. So when we do this Bible and Archaeology live on Fridays at 11 Central, you can send us questions in advance and we can prepare answers to these questions, and you can make sure that your questions are heard and that we can prepare answers. So again, become a patron, please, to Bible and Archaeology at patreon.com/excavator. Let's start with some news. I'm just trying to keep a check as people are joining us. And again, people will continue to join us throughout, but as people join us, Jordan, what's in the news?
Got two news stories for us this week. Obviously, there's more out there than this. Always check the Bible and Archaeology page for updated daily news as it comes through. But two news stories that we wanted to highlight here. The first one comes out of Israel. A recent salvage excavation that was happening just south of Jerusalem in advance of roadworks coming in. There's construction, as you know, everywhere, but in places like Israel, before roadworks happen, archaeologists are brought in to kind of check the area. Mm-hmm. In this case, they found a domestic structure, kind of a 4-room or a pillared house. And in addition to finding that architecture, they also found a shekel weight and half of a coin. Archaeologists have dated this coin to the 6th or 5th century BCE, which not only makes it very early, putting it in the Persian period and approximately 100 years after we start to see coins showing up, but also makes it one of only the handful of coins that have been found in Israel. Also notable about this coin is that it was broken in half. Now, this is what we see in lots of regions as coins start to show up. This is kind of like a hack silver is what it's all often called, where the coin is not used as a coin for currency, like you have a quarter, a gumball costs 25 cents, right, or it used to, and you can put 25 cents in. With the hack silver, the coin is a means of transporting this amount of silver around, but you're still buying things by weight. So that coin can then be broken into portions of weight. So we've got half of a coin that was found here, as well as a shekel weight. So showing that there is, this weights system going on, both with the weight that's there to balance this out, as well as the coin itself.
That's fascinating because the Persians are largely credited with being the first ones to use coinage. But again, the imprinting directly onto the metal, onto the material, it used to be the idea that you would put so much, whatever it was, bronze, gold, silver, whatever, into a sack, and then you would clasp the sack, and then you would put some kind of impression on that seal to mark that this has been weighed properly, and if that seal's broken, then it's been tampered with. But the idea of actually stamping directly onto the piece of metal to know that this has been weighed properly, that was a new thing, and we start seeing that during the Persian period. So if they're saying 6th or even 7th century, this is right at the beginning of the idea of coins as we know them today. And if they're just breaking it in half, they're still using them as weights and not full-blown coins. Although I will say that half of coins, was in use for quite a while. I remember doing that as a child, saying, I needed 50 cents, and I ripped $1 in half, and my dad just going, yeah, that's not how it works. But, it makes sense. You can see the logic behind it.
Yeah, and they're continuing to study the coin to try to identify where did that silver come from. Can we place this regionally to help understand that trade of where did the silver come in? Because it is still so rare for the region at this period. A second piece of news comes in regarding a Roman cultic site. So, a 1600-year-old temple dedicated to the Roman Emperor Constantine's ancestors was recently found. Now, the excavations to find this site came in response to the discovery of and the translation of a letter that Constantine sent to a city called Spello, where he granted that city permission to build an ancestral site for him to continue the practice of the ancestor worship of emperors. And a reason why this is important is, as we know, the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire comes under the rule of Constantine, but it's not as clear cut as sometimes it gets depicted. This is something that's frequently talked about of, does this happen overnight? How slow is this process? What does the transition of cult look like? And this site is giving us more information into not just that there's, some continuity of cult that continues on, but that the emperor himself is continuing to grant permission and instruct people in some cases, yes, to continue to build these things as, religious practices are adapting. There's fluidity here. So a very interesting site there, and I'm sure there will be more that comes out of this as they expand the excavation in that area.
Right, and this is one of those issues that keeps coming up. The notion that Constantine sees as the hero, and he sees the sign in the sky, and immediately becomes a very evangelical Christian and bans all other religions, and that's just not the case. That wasn't the case. It took a while, and so he eventually legalizes Christianity. But the other traditional Roman religions were still legal as well, and they didn't get outlawed. They weren't put on the back burner until much later. So this first edict of Milan, allowing Christianity to come out from hiding and to be practiced, didn't mean that all those other religions went away. It just means that it was now legal, but Constantine certainly allowed this plurality, this pluralism, and he wasn't just Christian or nothing. So this is good. This is a nice discovery.
The archaeology confirming what a lot of the scholarly consensus has been about this transition, but an interesting discovery certainly that backs up the textual record that we had here.
Good, very good. I am beginning to see questions coming in. Please, you're more than welcome, and I encourage you to ask questions in the chat box there, and we will do our best to answer them as we come along. If it takes us a minute to get to them, don't worry, we will do our best to answer them. Before we get into our topic, do we want to look at some of these real quick?
Yeah, I think we've got a good question here that we should address that is news related.
Yeah.
That has been something that was in our sites over the last year, and that's a question here from What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You. Your thoughts on Dr. Aaron Mayer's theory that the Ebal tablet is a fishing weight. And this is coming in response to some of those journal articles that were published at the end of last year, the three responses that talk about, one was kind of about what has gone on here in the processes, one regarding the study of the lead itself and what that study does and does not say, and then one regarding a theory of a fishing weight here. So Bob, your thoughts on that question, on that situation?
Well, as I mentioned, I may or may not have commented a little bit on this Mount Ebal piece of lead a few times over the last year. And people, fans of the show have seen these videos. Aaron Mayer's a colleague, and I've chatted with him about this on a couple of occasions. He's not wrong. Let's put it that way. The article that he wrote, and we can chat about this, but the article that he and Professor Rolston published is basically a summary of what many, of course it's their points of view. It's their views. But many of the views that they put in that article are similar to many of the views that have been shared by many scholars working in the public realm, including myself and several other scholars. that have just been highly doubting this Mount Ebal. It's not even an inscription. I don't even like calling it a Mount Ebal inscription. There is no inscription there. This thing
Right.
has been. I try to be professional and I try to be kind, but I also need to be honest. And Dr. Stripling and Dr. Galil have every right to make claims, and I have every right, and other scholars have every right to debunk those claims or to counter those claims. And there's just nothing there. The methodology was bad, the claims are bad, and there's nothing there. Now, I have a colleague, David Meadows. David, I hope you're feeling better. David suggested to me that this is some kind of clasp. It's some kind of folding clasp. Of course, in one of the 3 articles that came out, they suggested it was a fishing weight. That's certainly a clasp that would go around a piece of string, and you can certainly see, I've said in one of my previous videos, you can see kind of the place where it looks like it would have been, where the clasp would have folded over. Whether or not it's actually a fishing weight, we don't know. It's definitely a clasp. So it was used to go over some kind of string, whether that was a string on a fishing net that was thrown into the water, we don't know. They made a pretty good argument for a fishing net, for a fishing clasp, a lead weight. We don't know. What we do know is that it's a piece of lead that was pounded out, that clasps over, and that there's no inscription on this thing. It was brought to the public via social media, right? It did not follow all of the standard. It's unprovenance, first of all. It came out of a 40-year-old dump pile. It was brought to the public attention via a YouTube press conference. And to his credit, it was very well marketed. They had, YouTube after interview so it had a very effective marketing campaign, to their credit, followed by, X or whatever it is now, a lot of social media coverage. And I happen to take the view of the scholars who say when something comes into the public sphere via social media, you should let social media take care of it. And the reason we can do this now is there are plenty of scholars, highly trained, PhD holding public scholars who are in social media. Now that wasn't the case 20 years ago, but after the rise of blogs and scholars understanding they used to say this about blogs, blogs, anybody can do it. But then when we harness the power of this, all of a sudden, a lot of prominent scholars, archaeologists, including Professor Mayer, they started blogs. And now with the rise of YouTube, with the rise of the technology that we're using to do this live cast right here, which used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, you needed to have a little studio, and now you can do it for a fraction of the cost. These same scholars, myself as a tenured professor at the University of Iowa, we can set this up and we can make these same claims and reach the public immediately. We don't have to wait a year and a half for peer review or whatever. We can still write these articles. That's great. But we can go out there as soon as these claims are made. We can address them. And that's what we've been doing. We've been addressing all of the issues, many of the issues which were addressed in Dr. Mayer and Dr. Rolston's article. We've been making these claims to the public immediately and trying to counteract this marketing campaign, this fundraising campaign that they've been doing. So was it a fishing weight? Maybe. We know for certain that it's a clasp. We also know one other thing's for certain. There's no inscription on there. What they're reading is degrading lead. They're using the same technology that is at Brent Sears. What's his name? Brent at Kentucky.
At Kentucky with the Herculaneum scrolls.
Yeah, with the Herculaneum. Professor Dilly, Paul Dilly, my colleague here, our colleague.
It's technology that can be used reliably.
Yeah,
there are valid uses for.
Correct. And I think the people that they got to take these images do it effectively. They've published papers and you can do it. But when you look at the paper that the same people that took the images for Stripling and Galil, if you look at the images that they published, you can clearly see the writing versus the images, let's say, that Dr. Galil are putting forward, they don't even match what the photographs.
Well,
I mean,
Galil's putting out the hand drawn.
Yeah.
It's not, they're not using the photos that are produced. And when they are, they're stacked multiple photos on top. But those images where here we see the letters, those are all hand created, which can be used. And there's situations where if you've probably all seen rubbings or squeezes of like the Salome inscription, where that helps create a reading here, but we can see it, look at the stone itself. So,
right.
Yeah.
But when you overlay Galil's drawing on top of the very photograph that they produced,
the photos that they're using,
they don't match.
Yeah.
I mean, he's stretching. So even when you try to give them the benefit of the doubt and use their own data, it doesn't line up. They're using their imagination. I don't like using the word fraud because that's a legal term. So you never hear me use that word. I don't want to say the word phony because there's clearly things there. These are degrading lines, but they're not letters. They're just not. And I can say that over and over. And Professor Mayer and Professor Ralston put together in a formal article the responses that many of us have been saying for a long time. Let me just address one other thing. The problem that I have with writing a formal response in a peer-reviewed journal to this ridiculous claim, this made-up claim, is that it elevates it to a level of academic discourse. They had to go shopping for a journal that would publish this thing. They had to find this obscure journal that deals with metal and...
Well, Stripling's article. Should clarify here, since we're talking about a couple of Stripling's. Yeah.
And when they finally got it published, now they're claiming, well, we got published in a peer-reviewed journal, and most scholars just went, yeah, but we know better. We know what they did and how they had to go shopping for this article and how many...
When it was a technical journal that was focused on the method of the analysis, of the scanning. Correct. And of the reading. That was the core of that original article was, what's the process of the scan? Can we see these? How do we stack these images? It was not about the translation or the inscription.
Correct. What I don't think ought to happen is again, it's an unprovenanced object. That's the other thing. This thing's unprovenanced, and we don't publish unprovenanced things. We just don't. One of the first things I did when I took the editorship of a former magazine that I worked at is I said no more publishing unprovenanced objects, and I was applauded for this. This was a great thing. We don't even report on them because we don't want to give them oxygen. And I think, me personally, this is my opinion, people will disagree with this is fine, but as soon as you start reporting and writing about and responding to these completely ridiculous claims in peer-reviewed journals, and you claim, well, it's the editio princeps or princeps, and so we have to respond, you're just elevating it and saying, well, this is worth responding to. And now they're going to turn around and claim, well, it's part of the academic discourse. See, it's worthy of response. And now they'll claim, see, we just agree to disagree as scholars, and it elevates it, and you shouldn't do that. It came into the world on social media. It should leave the world and die in social media. It should never be addressed in any kind of formal, and that's my issue with addressing it with a formal publication. There's a lot of claims on the internet that are ridiculous that don't get addressed in formal publications. This is a ridiculous claim. Why are we addressing it with formal publications? That was my issue.
And I want to make sure I make one kind of clarification for us here. There are those in this stack of articles. This one with the fishing weight was written by Amahai Mazar. Yeah. So I just want to make sure that, yeah. So this, and if you're interested in reading those, they are available for you in the Israel Exploration Journal. That's where they came out. Right. If you're looking to see more of what's going on there. But I wanted to make sure, drop that credit as we end it here.
And they're quality articles. They're good articles. They're well researched. They only cite peer review publications. I take that back. Ralston and Mayer's article does cite one public piece of scholarship, and that is Chris Ralston's own blog. But they basically don't cite all of the public scholarship that's been done. They just cite peer review scholarship, and they leave out all of the public scholarship that's been done in all of the social media platforms that that this discussion has been taking place for the past year. And we'll leave it at that. It's not an inscription. And I see there's some more comments in here. Yeah, this is Myth Vision. Hi, Derek. Yeah, it's embarrassing. But again, this is the issue with public scholarship, is so many people want to believe this, that it causes damage. And your question is correct. I don't know if it damages Dr. Stripling's reputation in the field, because the people that he appeals to believe him. And there were already people that didn't like where he was digging and how he was digging. And so I don't think it hurts him more or helps him more. I think he is appealing to his audience, and he's doing what he's been doing. And so I don't think it's that. And again, it's nothing personal against him. I'm sure he's a kind guy, and I've never said anything negative about him personally. It's not a personal thing. I don't have any ill will towards him. It's about the claim. Everything I've ever said is about the claim itself. It's just not personal.
And also the future, a future concern that some have is, given this claim and the ongoing excavations led by Stripling at Shiloh, of how will this influence future work or the focus of excavations there, or how those reports get processed going forward. So, there is more. The ripples reach further than just what's said about this object reaches further than just this object.
Well, and let's say one more thing, because we made a video about this as well. I think something else is happening, and that is the politicization of archaeology, which we try never to do. But, they're essentially digging this thing up on Mount Ebal, which is in the heart of the West Bank, and they're doing it, and they're taking this object, they're taking it into a settlement, an Israeli settlement in the West Bank, and then they're turning around and pleading for funds from the Israelis, from the Israeli government, to basically annex this site. I think that at the end of the day, that's what this is about. They want to annex, the Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal. They want to annex it for Israel. And then when you look at what's going on in Gaza, and wherever you stand on that, when you look at what's going on nationwide, you can see that there's this evangelical Christian, right wing in America teaming up with the right in Israel to politicize archaeology for some political motive. And I've said that before. I'm very careful when I say it, but I think that's at play here. I think that this is going to be used somehow within the government to try to raise funds to do away with the two-state solution and annex part of this site. Remember, this site isn't an official site. It's in the West Bank. It's controlled by the army. And I think there's something at play here politically to try to, if this is a real inscription, then they'll have more of a play, more of a claim towards this for Israel. So I think there's some politics going on here as well. And again, we try never to use archaeology politically, but I think that's what's happening.
I think that's great. And now if we can, I'd like to poke you towards some Ark of the Covenant questions.
Okay, sure.
So let's just kind of set the stage here. Start at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Ark of the Covenant?
Well, clearly it's a what did they say in the movie? It's a telephone for speaking to God. No, it's not what it is.
I think that is the line.
The Ark of the Covenant, let's just come right out and say it, in how I teach it, it is no different than what many other peoples in antiquity had. It's a wooden box covered in gold that represents the presence of a deity. Now, what do we call that in every other religious tradition? What do we call that in every other culture? a wooden thing carved out of wood, overlaid in gold. It's got mythological hybrid beings on the top, and it
Yep.
represents the presence of a deity. I mean, typically that's an idol
An idol. So why don't we call it that? Why?
because idols are banned. Now, if you look at Hebrew Bible scholarship, idols are banned later. Because early on, it looks like ancient Israel worshipped multiple deities and had this wooden box covered in gold with mythological hybrid beings. Cherubs are these mythological hybrid beings, and they carried it around with them, and it was the footstool of God. God would speak to Moses from this box, but that's what it is. It represents the presence of the deity, of the Hebrew God. And like other objects that we read about in the Bible, like the temple, the instructions, like the Ark, Noah's Ark, another box, right? The instructions are said to come from God. So the instructions are divine. It's not something that humans came up with. Like the temple, like Noah's Ark, the instructions came from above. And so they're said to build it. Then they're said to venerate it, and they're said to take it with them as they travel on their various adventures.
And could we talk about the mobility of it? Because this
Sure.
is very distinctive of the period that it comes around, and maybe part of why it goes away later on. What is the importance or the role of mobility with the Ark here for the period that it shows up?
Okay, and again, we are monitoring your questions, and Jordan will look at them while I'm trying to formulate these answers. But the mobility of the Ark of the Covenant is key. It's got these rings on its feet. Yes, the Ark of the Covenant had feet. It had rings and poles that went through it. This is a mobile object. It's something that is going to be carried by a mobile people, by a nomadic people. Remember, the way that we have the story in the Bible is that the Hebrews were this nomadic people, right? They went over to Egypt, and then you have this story of the being in slavery and then coming out of slavery. And again, we're not talking about archaeological evidence for any of this or whether the story is true or false. We're saying this is the story that we have in the Bible, and they're told to build this box and to carry it with them. And they're a nomadic people, according to the story, and they've got this mobile ark. And this is interesting because when you read about how to build it in Exodus, how to build it in Exodus 24 and 25 and 26, and then where they take it, it's a mobile presence of God for mobile people. But once Solomon builds the temple, and you have David's attempt to bring it to Jerusalem, and then it starts killing people, so he gets scared and he puts it back out, and then Solomon brings it up into the temple. Once you put this mobile ark into the permanent temple, which now represents a permanent landed people, all of the veneration that was ascribed to the ark now goes to the temple. And it's about that time that we stop hearing about the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, the idea is that it's in there. It's in the Holy of Holies, in this innermost sanctum. It's the place that other Syrian temples of the period, 9th century, 10th century, when we see it at Ain Dara, when you hear them at, what's the other one that's up there?
Well, the nearby temple of Moza has a similar footprint.
Well, yeah,
that they're
Moza,
excavating
we'll
right
get to
now.
Moza.
Ain
But
Dara famously,
yeah. Tayanat, till Tayanat. You've got Tayanat, you've got Ain Dara. You've got these temples that basically have the big room out front, the little room in the back, and that's where you're going to find all of the icons,
the Holy of
right?
Holies.
The Holy of Holy type. And of course, Tel Moza, which is a fascinating dick that Shua's got going on there. Same idea. These temples were all built the same way. Even though God gave the instructions for them, coincidentally, they all kind of are built with the same idea.
The message got spread.
Yeah, it was a good plan. It was a very effective layout. But once the people are landed, and this is their promised land, their land where they're going to live, the temple becomes the symbol of the landed people. So when they were mobile people, they had this mobile thing, And then when they're a landed people, the temple takes on all the veneration that was ascribed to the ark, which is interesting because when the Babylonians come along later and destroy the temple, what's Ezekiel's vision, right? He starts seeing this Merkavah, right? He starts basically a pimped out ark again, right? It's this mobile...
The mobile presence.
The mobile presence of God again. Oh, look, God doesn't live in a house. He doesn't live in a fixed temple. He's now mobile again. Oh, we're mobile again. We're in Babylon. We can move around. And so the presence of God shifts from the Ark of the Covenant to the temple once they become a landed people, and then back to the Merkavah once they're in exile. And then again, the idea is back to the temple once they build up the second temple. The idea, though, is the Ark of the Covenant at some point goes away. And then the big question...
Well, and is there some problem, with Solomon bringing the ark in? This is a part of that, or different ideas for when the text comes to be that we have these stories, but cult centralization, we're bringing the focus here. And a mobile ark does present some conflict for that. If it's still given focused, if it's revered as a mobile presence of God and the temple is revered as that, stationary presence of God, don't we have we need it to lose some of the focus? Well, because could it be carried back out?
This is my theory. Now, we've made an entire video. Please, I encourage you, and we can put We can
put it in the description.
Right, put it in the description after. We made an entire video about this, but I have a theory. It's a very minority theory. It's my own thing. But there are many theories on what happened to the Ark of the Covenant, right? So
yeah, let's go through these before we get to... Let's kind of work our way down the list to get to...
because I like my theory. I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility, but Shishak comes along and could have taken it, right? So Shishak, the Egyptian pharaoh, Shoshank comes up and does his campaign, and he might have taken it. The Assyrians might have taken it, right? In 2 Kings 18, Isaiah 36 through 39, you have this story of you haven't been doing what you say, and Hezekiah comes out and says
the siege of Sennacherib.
Right. They basically come out and they say, "What we've done wrong, whatever you exact from us, we'll pay it." And then he goes in and it says what? He strips all the gold from the temple and he gives it to him. Was one of the things that he handed over the ark, or the gold from the ark or something like that. Maybe not.
Well,
maybe it's already gone. Maybe it's still there. Maybe the ark was left alone, or maybe that's something that they took and they just didn't want to say it.
Yeah. So and the siege of Sennacherib, we do also have that extra biblical reference too. Sennacherib talks about locking Hezekiah up, right, like a bird in a cage. Of a dual accounting here.
Yeah,
but also does describe that tribute that Hezekiah
and he has this massive list of tribute. This is extra biblical corroboration of that account in 2 Kings 18, and he says here are all the things that he paid me, and so maybe that's where it went. And of course, you've got the Babylonians. They often get attributed as the ones who took it. But there's a list of items in the Bible of the things that the Babylonians took, and the ark's not there. So it could have burned, right? They could have taken it, but you would think that it'd be included in that list. And then it could have survived, and then the Romans either took it or destroyed it in the destruction of the temple all the way down in the Second Temple, 70 CE. The problem is that we see that in the Arch of Titus.
Arch of Titus, yeah.
We see the table of presence, we see the trumpets, we see all these things that were there in the temple, but we don't see the ark. And so the ark was probably gone by then. We have a great story about Jeremiah in Second Maccabees.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
Right? Second Maccabees is a great story of Jeremiah hiding it. And then you get all these legends about putting it in tunnels, and is it hidden under the Temple Mount? We get all these legends. My theory is that if you read carefully 2 Kings 18, when Hezekiah is doing his reforms, if you read 2 Kings 18:4, and I've got it called up here, Hezekiah, he's trying to centralize religion around Jerusalem. And again, God commanded the construction of a lot of these things, including the Nehushtan, right? What do you do if you get bit by a serpent in the desert? Well, God commanded this, right? This isn't...
Yeah.
Is it an idol? But you make this bronze serpent, you stick it on a pole, you stick it in the ground, and if you get bit by an asp, very dangerous, you go first, right? If you get bit by one of these asps, I love that movie, man. If you get by an asp, you look at the snake and you'll be healed by your snake bite. That was a thing.
But the Nehushtan stays around. It doesn't just,
and it's still there. But there were also
we talk
these
about
high
it like
places.
it normally disappears.
No,
but it doesn't. It stays in the temple.
They kept
right.
it. And they have these high places. They have these matzebot, right? These standing stones that, you read about them all throughout the Bible. Jacob, right? And God did something here. I'm going to put this standing stone. I'm going to anoint it. And so Hezekiah says, no more of this. I don't care whether God commanded it to be constructed or not. This is from the mouth of God. He says, whether God commanded it to be built or not, we're destroying all of this stuff, and only the temple will be the place that you worship. And so in 2 Kings 18:4, it's crediting Hezekiah with destroying everything but the temple, basically. He removed the high places. He broke down the pillars. He cut down the sacred pole of this Asherah. Right? Because we can go back to when maybe the Hebrew God and Asherah, did God have a wife? Thank you, Bill Deaver. Right? This whole book that he had written and this the Kirbet el-Qalm inscriptions and all these things. He broke into pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made upon the instruction of God. So Hezekiah is not beyond breaking apart, destroying objects that God himself commanded Moses himself to make. Right? Hezekiah, okay, God told Moses to make this, but I'm going to smash it. Why? Because it's the temple. No other graven image, no other man-made image we're going to worship. It's just the temple. So my theory is, why wouldn't Hezekiah have taken the ark and said, this is a box overlaid with gold with hybrid mythological beings on it, and we're no longer going to venerate this thing. It's the temple, not the ark. And originally in 2 Kings 4, the ark was listed in there, and somebody came along later and said, no, you can't say that you, and they just erased it. And so I think, this is a theory, I'm completely speculative, completely circumstantial. I concede this. So don't yell at me and say you don't have any evidence for this. Of course I don't. But I think that it's very possible that it was just erased and lost to history, that Hezekiah destroyed it, just like he did the Nehushtan, and it just is lost to history.
It's gone at some point.
It's gone. It's gone.
At some
You're never
point,
going to find it. It's not sitting in a crate in a U.S. government warehouse.
Has it? There's the theories, right? We have that Indiana Jones scene. Yeah, it's in that box, in the wooden box rolled into a huge room. But we also have some other claims regarding the discovery, like Noah's Ark, that, every now and then you'll get, have they found it? Is there a sighting of it? Should people put any stock in these theories, or do you think there is a hope that the Ark will be found, or could it be proven to be? What are your thoughts on that? Because it's one of those things that doesn't go away.
Right. Look, I'm the first one to say I would love to see this thing discovered. I just think it's gone. They were much better recyclers than we were.
Yeah.
It was made out of wood and made out of gold.
You're not going to throw the gold away.
No, they're going to recycle the gold. They're going to do what you do with gold. They're going to melt it down and they're going to reuse it into something else. Or it was destroyed. I don't think it's out there. I think it's gone. You have too many people who had an opportunity to take it, including Hezekiah himself, but you've got all these foreign peoples. Jerusalem was destroyed too many times. And this was a fun story to tell, right? You want to save this thing. So you've got biblical stories. You've got stories in 2 Maccabees. You've got stories in the Talmud. You've got stories of all these things that could have. It gets mentioned in Hebrews, right? It's of what was in it, right?
What was inside.
Yeah, and they keep adding things to it. So it's the covenant. Yeah. Then it's the covenant and the manna, and it's got
Aaron's rod that budded.
Yeah, it's a kind of I talk about when I teach my Jerusalem class, my history of Jerusalem, that it's one of those magnet objects. It just sucks in. It's like the old Ross Pro. It's a huge sucking sound. It sucks traditions to it, just like Jerusalem does. And so the Ark of the Covenant is just so much fun that it just sucks all these traditions into it. But no, it's gone. I mean, it's gone. Doesn't make for a good TV show. So I'll go do all these TV shows.
Can we find the Ark of the Covenant? No.
No, that's a 1 minute short. But I'll go out there and I'll tell all the story. The other big story is it's in Ethiopia, right? Queen of Sheba comes
Yeah.
And Solomon gives it to her, and the Ethiopians have it. And, that's an interesting tradition. Of course, they don't, but they have these traditions that they've got it, and they're very much into it. There are arks at the front of every temple, of every modern. You put an ark and you put the Torah in there, and this is representative. Eric and Carol Myers found an ark. I remember it was on the cover of a archaeology magazine once, a biblical archaeology magazine, because they found one of these arks. Right, it was replicating the Ark of the Covenant. So I mean, it's a popular story. It's a popular icon, but I think it's gone.
Can I ask about another tradition that we do have maybe some reference to, but is kind of grown, and that's the Ark is the super weapon. This is a part of that Indiana Jones plot line. The Ark is the super weapon. In the Bible, is the Ark, without fail, pull it out, you're going to win super weapon, or is it more complicated than that?
I would say it is not. It gets, it's this thing that can burn out your eyes, everybody at once. And look, I love Steven Spielberg, and I want him to hire me to do one of his scripts for Indiana Jones 7 or whatever. But he makes great movies. And that was a great scene. That's an iconic scene, and I loved it, and it made me want to become an archaeologist, just like most archaeologists. But it's not a super weapon. You know how we know? Because we've got this great verse in the Bible that's 2 Samuel 5, 1 Samuel 5, 2 Samuel 5, where they lose. What's that?
When they lose in battle?
Yeah, when they go and fight the Philistines.
1 Samuel 4.
And the Philistines take it. And then, and then God starts cursing. They put it in front of Dagon, and Dagon falls down, and his head falls off, and our idols' heads are falling off, right? And then, the idea is that they're like, well, we can't hang on to this thing. And then they concoct this plan to say, like, this oxen are never going to go this way. They'll definitely go this way. But if they go this way into the desert, we know that God is at work here. And of course, they go over there with the golden tumors and the mice and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, no, you can lose in battle with this. I also like the story when they come back and tell Eli. Remember this? They come back and they tell Eli, by the way, your sons have died. And he's like, oh. He's like, they also got the Ark of the Covenant. And he's like, oi, and he falls over backwards and breaks his neck, right? Yeah. It's the Ark, not these kids. He knew they were, But, it's not a super weapon. But again, I always compare that to the stories that we hear about, let's say, Samson, right? Is the power in his hair? No. The power isn't in his hair that gets cut. The power is in the vow that he took to God, that Nazirite vow. And it's when he broke the vow that he loses his power. It has nothing to do with it. There's no magic in his dreads, right? It's that he broke the vow, and therefore once you break the vow, the covenant with God is broken. And so the Ark isn't necessarily a super weapon. They can lose in battle, right? They took the Ark to Jericho and they won, but they also took the Ark to Ai and they lost. Right? But it's somebody broke the vow. Somebody took the gold. And my guess is that everybody took some booty and they just picked one guy and they lifted up his tent.
You're going to find something underneath most tents.
So they just picked one guy. But no, it's the idea of maintaining that covenant with God. And Samson broke the Nazirite vow. And so he lost his power, and the Philistines are going to beat him in battle. And so it's not a super weapon. It's the representation of God, just like so many other cultures had. Yeah. But because the later tradition is no idols, we don't want to call it an idol. So it's something special.
It gets a new distinction.
Yeah, we have the same problem
with by itself.
We have the same problem with God and demons and angels, and the reason that they have all these other names is it's a monotheistic religion. If it were a polytheistic religion, we'd call them all deities or demigods. But since it's monotheistic, we come up with other names for it, even though all of these beings are divine beings. We have to come up with other names for it because we've already predefined that there's only one God, so these have to be something else. Even though they're not human, even though they're divine, even though they're immortal. right? Gods create other gods and other traditions. So anyway, that's what's going on there.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. As we're coming near the end of our time here, I wanted to move to a question from a comment that had been left on our recent top 10 list video, the top 10 finds of 2023.
Right.
A comment that got a good bit of reaction is the question of what is biblical archaeology? Some viewers were upset that in this top 10 list, in a channel like ours, Bible and Archaeology, we're talking about biblical archaeology, that these objects aren't proving the Bible to be true. Could you clarify? Could you give some definition here? What's biblical archaeology, Bob? And what does that term mean for our viewers?
Sure. Well, the first thing I want to point out is that our channel is Bible and archaeology. It's not biblical archaeology. So we deal with issues about the Bible. If you have a question about the Bible, about a verse about the Bible.
Like the Ark of the Covenant here today.
Yeah. Or if you have a question about archaeology, you can ask it. It doesn't have to be biblical archaeology. And I like to point that out because in our top 10 list, you'll see things from Egypt or from Turkey or from Iran or from, modern day Iraq, from Pakistan, so we do archaeology of the Eastern Mediterranean, right? Of Southwest Asia. And we try to do things that are in the world of the Bible. And so what I've always done is, there was a time when biblical archaeology was, the Bible and the spade, and you're going around trying to prove the Bible. Everything's apologetics, and we don't do apologetics. We're not an apologetic channel. I don't like apologetics. It's a bad methodology. What we try to do instead is to try to do good science, do good methodology. It's why I harp so much on those who engage in biblical studies and who engage in archaeology, but don't follow good methodology. I'm a stickler for this. I like to have fun. I like to speak so that people can understand me. I try not to be pretentious, right? I try to do this but you have to have good methodology. And so what we try to do is good, sound archaeology that illuminates the background of what we call the biblical world. So all of basically the Mediterranean, especially the Eastern Mediterranean, all of Southwest Asia, all of the lands that could have an impact or that did have an impact on the world that became ancient Israel, gave rise to where Christianity spread to, things like that. That's archaeology. And then, of course, the Bible and all of the things that could impact the Bible. So that's how I define biblical archaeology. It's, Tel Aviv University has a good way of doing it's the studies of the land of the Bible. And so what is the Bible? And then what are all of the things that impact the land that gave rise to the Bible? Or the way I did it with my book, the cities that built the Bible. So what do we know about all of the cities that contributed to the composition of the Bible? And that's different than doing apologetics. I want to learn as much as I can about all of this world, this biblical world, and then how it impacts the Bible.
I think that's helpful. Maybe one last question here from that top 10 list as well. We had we had one story in that, the Herculaneum scrolls, that were talking about the use of digital tools and some AI. And then we had some other stories over the year as well. AI being used to translate some Akkadian cuneiform, AI being used to help identify Roman forts in the Syrian desert. What, in your perspective, is the future of AI going forward in the field of archaeology? Is AI going to, there's the fear, AI is going to replace everything. Can AI replace archaeologists? What's the role that AI can have as a positive in this field?
It is important and it is valuable. I don't think it'll replace things. Look, I wrote my dissertation back in 2007 using digital modeling to attempt to try to solve problems with archaeology. I think that digital visualization, I was trying to argue that should become a standard, a club in the bag or a tool in the toolbox of archaeologists. And now, this is what's happening, right? It's everybody's visualizing their archaeology. So when you find something, you put the tag on it, you put it in the bucket, but also you can put that into your digital model and that becomes part of the database. not just so that you can show it to the public, and it helps with fundraising and education and things like that, but that's just how we're going to do it. Everything is done in a 3D database now. But now we've got the use of this technology to help us. God, could you imagine if we had the technology that can read these rolled up scrolls when we found the copper scroll? I mean, instead of cutting it into strips, just
read it rolled.
Just do CAT scans and then solve the little algorithm to just say, here's what it says. AI can be like religion itself. I always make the comparison. It's a hammer. Religion is a hammer, right? You can build and do wonderful things with hammers. You can also do terrible things. And we just have to be careful with it. Do students cheat with it? Yeah. Do students also use it to find information and write good papers? Yeah. Can scholars do the same? Can it cut down on a lot of work that we used to do? It's like when we got the computer versus the typewriter. It can help. Can it also be misused and create a lot of problems? Yeah. I just hope it, doesn't take over. I hope I don't have to get my trailer and hook it up and go hiding from, the AI. And these aren't out of the realm stories, right? These are possibilities. We just have to be very careful with it going forward. But I think it can be an important tool.
I think we'll definitely see more stories about its use this year, especially with the continuing project, the Vesuvius project, looking at those Herculaneum scrolls. I know the research is still going on there. People are really interested in that cuneiform deciphering. There could be some real possibilities there, depending on always human review. So we'll definitely keep you up to date as more stories come out about this.
Great. We've got a little time left. Let's catch up on what do we got for questions here? Do you see anything that's fun? I've been seeing some pop up here. Let's see what we got. And thank you to all of you who are asking questions. What do you see in there that
we got a lot of good discussion? I think a question to tag here at the end is the thoughts on, again, from what your pastor didn't tell you, thoughts on the claim that iconography of the Ark of the Covenant compared with Egyptian objects, boxes, briars, shires, and the panel can suggest a period no earlier than the reign of Amenhotep. Could we use similar items from Egypt or other places to help date the potential creation or the stories of the creation of the Ark? Does that give us a dating?
Sure. To answer the quick question, the 49ers, from Noah here, I see a question. 49ers, so I'm pulling for because they have more people from Iowa on their team. So we're going to pull for the 49ers. More Hawkeyes. Go Hawks. I think that a box overlaid in gold, but this idea of the cherubim, I've always drawn the comparison to the Lamassu or to the Shedu. And you find these on the Syrian, they're always found to be guarding entrances to deities, basically. They're protecting deities. And so if you look at the one that got destroyed up in Syria, was it Tianot or was it, I said them earlier, it was completely destroyed, but you had them on the doors going in. Anytime you would go into a temple, you'd find them there. You see them kind of on the walls of Babylon, right? You find these you find them on entrances to gates into cities. They're protectors. And I wrote about this on Bible and Archaeology. We can put the link in the description. Where you see these cherubs appear are on places that need protection. So you find them God puts one outside of the Garden of Eden, and you get the flamey sword as well. You get them all on the temple, on the entrance into the temple and the entrance to the Holy of Holies. They're sewn into the curtains. They're sewn into everything there. You see them on the top of the Ark of the Covenant. They're always guarding the deity. They're guarding entrances. And so I don't see, there might be a connection to Egypt, but I see them more as a Syrian or Mesopotamian phenomenon. And this is just what this is what people do. They make a representation of their deity, and they put their cherubs there. And the fact that they're on top, maybe that was an attempt to say that the God's not in the box, but it is this footstool. Our God is here, and this is the way that we're kind of, maybe they were already on the way of seeing it as a celestial deity. But no, I see it as a tie to the region that they're in, and this is Canaan and Syria.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. I think we're at our time for today. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We really appreciated having you join in. And this recording will be available on the Bible and Archaeology YouTube page. So if you're wanting to come back later or you're wanting to share this, you'll be able to share this live stream. And keep an eye out for future Bible and Archaeology lives.
Yeah, we'll try to do this at 11 every Friday. Please tell your friends. Please join us back here. I like the discussion that we're having here, but tell your friends, come back and join us. And for Jordan, I'm Bob Cargill, wishing you everything the best. And as always, go Hawks. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Now, one of these days, I'll figure out how to turn this thing off. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks. You get a bonus minute.
Yeah.